Have you ever met someone who just can't stop talking? You know the type. They always need to fill the silence, always have something to say. Whether it's a meeting, a group chat, or a dinner table conversation, they just can't not give their opinion. Sometimes it's entertaining. Other times, exhausting. And let's be honest, sometimes that person is us. In a world full of noise, social media, hot takes, endless opinions, it's easy to forget that silence can be powerful. That not saying something is sometimes the wisest thing we can do. Today's story is about that. It's about a friendly tortoise who talked a little too much and how that habit nearly cost him everything. It's funny, it's a little tragic, but more than anything, it's deeply human. So take a breath. Settle in. Because this isn't just a tale from the past. It might just be a mirror for the present. In a quiet valley nestled between rolling green hills, there sparkled the peaceful blue lake. Birds sang in the reeds, dragonflies danced over the water, and animals of all kinds came to drink, bathe, and play. And right in the middle of it all lived a tortoise named Kamba. Now, Kamba wasn't just any tortoise. He was the most talkative creature for miles. Morning to night, he talked about the clouds, about the breeze, about the odd shape of a pebble. He narrated his day like a personal podcast with no off button. I believe today's algae tasted a little saltier than usual, he'd mutter to no one in particular. Maybe it's the shift in wind patterns. Even when alone, he'd talk out loud, commenting on his steps, asking himself questions, answering them. And yet, Kamba wasn't unkind. In fact, he was cheerful, friendly, and curious, which made him well-liked, even if sometimes a bit much. Two wild geese, who often stopped by the lake during their seasonal travels, had become his closest companions. Their names were Varna and Sona. They were graceful, clever, and calm, the kind of friends who didn't speak unless they had something worth saying. When they first met Kamba, they found his endless chatter amusing. He's like a one-tortoise orchestra, Varna tooted. No pauses, no breaks. Kamba took it as a compliment. That's right, he said proudly. I like to keep things lively. Silence is boring, don't you think? The geese smiled politely, but sometimes they wished he'd let the breeze do the talking. Seasons passed. Then came summer, harsher than any before. The rains failed. The grass turned yellow. Cracks spread across the ground like spider webs, and the lake began to shrink.
Day by day, the waterline receded, exposing muddy patches and wilting reeds. Fish vanished. Frogs migrated. The once vibrant lakeside became quiet, still, and dangerously dry. Kamba tried to stay optimistic. I'm sure it'll rain tomorrow, he chirped one morning, or the day after. These clouds must mean something. But the clouds passed, empty and silent. Varna and Sona grew worried. We can't stay here much longer, they whispered one evening. But the marshlands to the north still have water, food, safety. They didn't want to leave their friend behind, but flying was the only way to get there. And tortoises, as everyone knows, do not fly. The next day, they came to Kamba, their wings heavy with sadness. Kamba, said Sona, we've decided to go. We'll head to the northern marshes before it's too late. Kamba blinked. Go? You mean without me? They nodded gently. But I'll die here. You can't just leave me. I need water. I need food. He stopped, panic rising in his throat. There must be a way. The geese looked at one another. "There might be," Vana said slowly, "but it's risky, and it depends entirely on you." Kamba sat up straight. "I'll do anything." "Then listen carefully," said Sona. "We'll carry you in the air, but for it to work, you must keep your mouth shut the entire time, not a single word." Kamba's mouth fell open in disbelief, then quickly shut again when he realized the irony. "We'll hold a strong stick between our beaks. You bite the middle, we'll fly you to safety. But if you open your mouth mid-air, you'll fall, and it won't be a soft landing." Kamba gulped. "I can do that, I promise. Not a word. Silent as a pebble." The geese eyed him doubtfully. "You must be silent," they said again. And so the plan was set. Early the next morning, while the sun was still rubbing the sleep from its eyes, the two geese returned carrying a smooth, sturdy stick between their beaks. Kamba stood by the lake's edge, nervous but determined. They went over the plan once more. "Remember," Sona warned, "no matter what happens, no matter what you hear or see, do not open your mouth." "Not even to say thank you," Vana added with a stern nod. Kamba nodded quickly, lips sealed. Then he bit down firmly on the middle of the stick. And up they went. The geese flapped their strong wings, lifting slowly, straining with the tortoise's weight. Inch by inch, foot by foot, they rose, until Kamba was soaring above the world for the very first time. His wide tortoise eyes filled with awe. The earth stretched below him like a giant map, rivers twisting like ribbons, trees like tiny sprigs of herbs. Even the sun seemed closer. He wanted to shout, "I'm flying!" But of course he couldn't. He held on tightly. For a while, everything went smoothly. The air was crisp, the view was glorious, and Kamba was silent, though inside his head he was definitely narrating every second. Then, as they passed over a small village nestled between golden fields, a few farmers looked up and froze in disbelief. "What in the world? Is that a turtle flying? 2 geese are carrying him!" Soon a crowd gathered in the open square, pointing, laughing, exclaiming. Children waved wildly. Some adults chuckled. Others jeered. "Look at that silly creature dangling up there. Bet he thinks he's royalty now."
Kamba could hear it all, faint but clear. The laughter, the comments, the tone. And something inside him began to boil. His pride, that ever-present need to explain, to defend, to speak, rose up like a bubble about to burst. "They're laughing at me," he thought, cheeks flushing in the wind. "They don't understand. They think I'm just some fool." He clenched his jaw tighter, trying to fight the urge. But then, one particularly loud voice echoed, "What kind of turtle needs help to fly? Looks ridiculous." That was the final crack. Kamba opened his mouth to shout back, "You think you could do any better?" But the moment his lips parted, he lost the stick. His teeth slipped, his body tilted, and then he fell. A blur of sky and wind and panic. The geese cried out in shock, their beaks still holding either end of the now useless stick. Below, the villagers gasped as the tortoise plummeted like a heavy stone from the sky. Thud. A cloud of dust puffed into the air. For a long, tense moment, silence. Then a small groan from the middle of the road. Kamba. Miraculously, thanks to his tough shell, he wasn't dead. Bruised, shaken,
humiliated, but alive. His limbs twitched, his mouth hung open in disbelief. Around him, villagers whispered in awe, "He survived." The geese swooped down and landed beside him, their eyes filled with both relief and disappointment. Kamba said nothing. For once, he had no words.
Kamba lay there for some time, his head halfway tucked into his shell, not from pain, but from something deeper, shame. The crowd began to disperse, murmuring among themselves about what they had witnessed. Some were still chuckling. Others shook their heads, saying, "That tortoise learned his lesson the hard way." The geese, Sona and Varna, stood close. They didn't scold him. They didn't say, "We told you so." They just waited until Kamba slowly lifted his head. His eyes no longer sparkled with that endless urge to talk. They looked different, tired, thoughtful, humbled. I forgot," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I just wanted to say something back, to defend myself." Sona nodded. "We understand, friend, but sometimes the best defense is no reply." A kind old villager approached with a small clay bowl filled with water. She knelt beside Kamba, gently offering it. "You've had quite the fall, haven't you?" she said softly. Kamba nodded and took a careful sip. Then, silence again. It was strange. For the first time in his life, Kamba didn't feel the need to fill the space with chatter. His mind, instead of racing with words, sat still, like the surface of a calm pond. Later that day, once he could stand again, the geese made a new plan. The marshland, where water and safety still existed, wasn't too far now. With help from the villagers, they crafted a small sled, and together, the geese began to pull Kamba across the fields. It was a slower journey, but no one complained. Along the way, people who saw them recognized the tortoise from the story that had already begun to spread. Children pointed in wonder. Elders smiled in quiet understanding. By the time they reached the green marshes, Kamba wasn't just a tortoise who talked too much. He had become a symbol of something more. And though he still enjoyed stories, he learned to tell them with pauses, with thoughtfulness, and, most importantly, with the wisdom to know when not to speak. So, what do we learn from Kamba? Many of us, like him, carry an inner urge to explain ourselves, to react, to make sure our voice is heard in every situation. We comment on posts. We interrupt in meetings. We speak when we feel mocked or misunderstood, as if silence equals defeat. But in truth, silence can be our strength. How many conflicts escalate not from what was done, but from what was said afterwards? How often do relationships fracture because someone had to say one more thing? Kamba's fall is a metaphor for those moments in life when pride overpowers patience, when ego overrides wisdom. His fall reminds us that impulsive speech can undo careful plans, and that mindful silence can sometimes save us from regret, from humiliation, and even from real harm. That's not to say we should never speak. Truth, kindness, justice all have their time for expression, but the wisdom lies in knowing when that time is. As the Buddha once said, "Speak only when your words are more beautiful than silence." So the next time you're tempted to snap back, to comment, to blurt out, think of our friend Kamba floating in the sky with the whole world watching. And remember, sometimes the most powerful voice is the one that knows when to stay quiet.